Good afternoon, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. It's 1:30, and welcome everyone to the Water Quality Advisory Work Group meeting that's being put on by the Water Quality Division here at TCEQ. Thank you all for being here, those in person as well as those who are watching online. We appreciate your participation. And before we get into our agenda, which as usual has various different updates that we want to provide for you from the division, want to go over a few little housekeeping items. I guess first of all, for those of you, especially online, who haven't already done so, if you want to register for this meeting, we'd ask you to please either send an email to our outreach mailbox, which is outreach@tceq.texas.gov, or you can also pull up the email that you received for this meeting. There's a link in that email that you can click and get to that step a little quicker and easier. So please register if you haven't already, and you can also, if haven't done so before, you can ask to be put on the email list for these meetings in the future. And I guess as we go through each topic that we're going to present to you today, we'll pause after each one to take any questions that you might have, either here in person or online. Those of you who are watching online, if you do have questions, we would ask that you send your questions into our outreach email box, which again is outreach@tcq.texas.gov. Just send your questions in, and we will get to them as soon as we receive them and have time to address them. But if you don't think of anything while we're doing the presentations, something that comes to you later in the meeting, that's fine too, because we'll also have a question and answer session at the very end. We can cover anything that you thought of or anything else that might come to mind. So with that, I wanted to at least introduce those of us here in the meeting in person, and we'll start up here at the table with the TCEQ staff. Again, my name is Greg Easley. I manage the Water Quality Assessment section of the Water Quality Division here at TCEQ, and I'm your moderator for today's meeting. And we'll skip over to Lewis and go around the table here with introductions.
Good afternoon. My name is Lewis Heron. I'm with the Plan and Spec team. We do water reuse and plans and specs.
My name is Paul Broshai. I work with Lewis on the plans and specs team.
Good afternoon. My name is Dante Fichetti. I'm a permit writer on the Stormwater team in the Water Quality Division.
Good afternoon. My name is Michaela Coleman. I'm also a permit writer on the Stormwater team in the Water Quality Division.
My name is Danielle Monroe. I'm with the Customer Information and Assistance team in the Water Quality Division.
And my name is Maria Benitez. I am Technical Specialist for the Water Quality Division.
I'm Dr. Cole Gray. I'm a permit writer for the Industrial Wastewater team in the Water Quality Division.
And actually, we'd ask those of you in the audience as well to introduce yourselves. Leave those here in person. We have a microphone that will be passed around.
Hi, my name is Michelle Hill, and I'm Administrative Assistant with the CIA team.
Hi, everyone. Marty Kelly with Texas Parks and Wildlife Water Resources.
Lyle Tischler with Tischler Kasuric.
Sarah Bergen, Bracewell.
Joe Wilson, Gulf Coast Authority.
Jesse Spears, Lloyd Gosling.
Nathan Vassar, Lloyd Gosling.
Baltasar Lucio Ramirez, TCEQ Water Quality Division.
Meg Pierce Welsh, Plummer Associates.
Kara Denny, Burns & McDonald's.
Sarah Stogner, Stogner Legal.
Yes, Kyle Wright, USDA NRCS State Water Quality Specialist.
Paulina Williams, Baker Botts.
Dale Yates, Rio Resources.
Rebecca DuPont, TCEQ Enforcement Division.
Janet Sims, Mead and Hunt.
Chris Peters, Railroad Commission.
All right, thank you, everyone. So now that we've got introductions out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into the topics of our meeting. We'll first start off with Michaela on some permitting process updates.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, so today I'm going to provide some updates on the latest Title VI process improvements for the Water Quality Division. In case you're not familiar with this with this implementation, I'll give a little bit of background. So TCEQ entered into an informal resolution agreement with EPA in response to a complaint filed against TCEQ. This complaint alleged that there was discrimination against individuals with limited English proficiency in the administration of our permitting and public engagement programs, which then would be a violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. So that's sort of why we're calling it our Title VI efforts. So as a result of the informal resolution we reached with EPA, in order to meet the requirements of Title VI, TCEQ has done a few things. First, we published TCEQ's public participation plan. If you'd like to read it, it is TCEQ General Information Document 607. So if you were to search GI-607 on the webpage, you'd find it. We also published TCEQ's Language Access Plan, which is General Information Document 608. So you could search GI-608 to locate that. And then we also revised some of the public notice requirements in our state rules in 30 TAC Chapter 39. So the new plans and updated rules impact water quality permit applications in a few ways. The first being that all applications that were administratively complete on or after May 1st, 2022 are subject to the new public notice requirements in Chapter 39, which require a plain language summary of the application and also a translation of that plain language summary if alternative language notice requirements apply to the applicant. Additionally, applicants with alternative language notice requirements are required to provide a translated copy of each notice to TCEQ, both the first notice, the NORI, and the second notice, the NAPTI. And please keep in mind that failure to provide any of these translated notice documents can delay the permitting process. As a courtesy, some Spanish notice templates are available to assist applicants. TCEQ is also posting these alternative language notices and plain language summaries on our public webpage, in addition to any newspaper publications done by applicants. Applicants with alternative language requirements must publish their alternative language notices of any public meetings. And applicants may also be required to provide interpretation services at public meetings in certain cases. TCEQ's public participation plan also identifies using preliminary screening and public involvement plans, or PIPs, to ensure meaningful public outreach. So this is kind of the latest development we have to update you on. TCEQ developed an agency-wide form for all program areas that applicants will fill out. We're calling it the Public Involvement Plan, or the PIP form, and that is TCEQ form 20960. So if you search that form number on our web pages, you'll find it. So this new form is required to be attached as part of an application package for all of the water quality applicants applying for a new permit or a major amendment to their permit. And this is going to be a requirement for all applications received on or after November 1st of 2022. So currently, we are working on updating the applications just to make it clear in some of the attachment lists and the instructions that this is a required form that needs to be attached to your application. However, if you're working on an application right now, there's no need to wait for the new form. It's a separate PIP form that you can just attach to the existing application we have. That way you don't have any delays getting your applications ready to submit to TCEQ. We're continuing to post announcements regarding this new PIP form and the updated applications on our main wastewater and stormwater permits webpage, which is the tceq.texas.gov/permitting/wastewater webpage. So those are the major updates I have for our Title VI implementation. Are there any questions regarding that update? She's coming with the microphone, just a second.
Yes, as I mentioned, I'm Lyle Tischler. I'm going to have several questions. And Greg, in the interest of moving through this, would you rather I wait to ask questions from Ms. Goldman to the later at the end of the presentations, because it may take a bit to answer them?
Well, let's at least give them a shot and see how it goes. So go for it.
Okay, and I know that the program's new, Ms. Coleman, so you may have not have thought, I mean, I'm sure you've thought in depth about this, but one question I have with respect to major amendments, that covers a very broad set of different kinds of things under the TPDS permit. Some are as simple, I'm going to call them simple, as you want to add an additional outfall without changing anything in the plant. Well, another might be that you have a site-specific water quality standard that you want to get. What's going to be involved in the implementation that's different from the notices that we currently file today, including the Spanish language planning? What are the expectations for what I'm going to call major amendments that are not like a new facility that's grassroots?
Sure, I can do my best to answer that. So the public involvement plan form, its purpose is really to make applicants consider whether or not additional public notice or outreach is necessary. So mostly the form, it has a couple of preliminary screening questions at the beginning first to make sure, are you a new applicant or a major amendment applicant? And then the second question kind of gets down, or the second screening gets down into a little bit more detail. Where are you located in the state? If you're located in, you know, a really large metropolitan area like the Houston area, or an area where there is really limited English proficiency in the state, which also could be the Houston area. So there's a couple of screening questions like that. And if you don't meet the second screening, you actually don't have to complete the rest of the form. You would stop there and just submit that. If you do meet the secondary screening questions, then you're going to be answering questions just to help applicants better understand the stakeholders involved in their, or that might be impacted by their new activity. So it's just there to help applicants decide if they want to do any additional outreach to those stakeholders.
But I guess the question is, it's kind of subjective, even in the areas where you fill out the complete form. We're already doing 2 public notices, English, Spanish, third language if we had to, determining the level of interest on something like the major amendments that I just described, which are not, for example, construction of completely new additional manufacturing processes at an existing site. And many of the sites, as some of you all know, I mean, my partner and I represent a number of companies. They're almost always in the bigger metropolitan areas. And so I guess really what I'm trying to understand is whether you expect the applicant, I mean, what I'm hearing from you is you expect the applicant to make a determination whether they think something is so significant in terms of public participation that they may need to set up a public meeting. That's going to not be very clear to many people. If there's some guidance that y'all are going to get out on that, it would be very helpful to the regulated community.
Okay.
Because let me just say this. I work in most every state in the union doing permitting. There's few states that have the notice requirements that Texas does in terms of the number of people notified, the number of notices, and basically having to do it in English and Spanish. We already do a lot, and so I'm trying to figure out what in additional are the agency's expectations in terms of different types of major amendment projects. Again, I separate that from a new grassroots facility. I can understand where that, and where it's located is something that is going to be much more of public interest maybe to people that would not otherwise know about it. But whether it's an existing facility, there's a lot of things that turn out to be major amendments that are at least from my perspective, not something that would generate a lot of public interest.
Sure. I think, one example might be if in the original application or the last renewal of that permit, maybe with no major amendment, if there was a lot of public interest, if a public meeting was called for, a public hearing, that I would call significant public interest. And so it's possible that there could be significant public interest on any further actions on that permit, including a major amendment that's simply adding an outfall, as you described.
Okay.
So that's one scenario.
Yeah.
I definitely know that we have a guidance document either in the works or it might be being posted soon for specifically for applicants working on the Title VI requirements. I can find out if that's been posted or not and certainly share it.
That would be helpful. I think that pretty well covers the major issues that I really wanted to ask you about in
Sure.
terms of this process.
Any others on Title VI? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. Next up, we have several permitting process updates. Oh, I'm sorry, program-specific updates, and we'll begin with Cole.
Thank you, Greg. So to reiterate on some background information on the oil and gas general permits, TCEQ was transferred permitting authority for discharges into surface waters of the state for oil and gas extraction facilities and gas plants via House Bill 2771 during the 2018 legislative session. TCEQ obtained TPDES authorization from EPA in January 2021 via a revised memorandum of agreement. However, authority to issue permits for land application was not transferred to TCEQ via the House bill and remains under Texas Railroad Commission. So the general permit for hydrostatic discharges, TXG 670000, which I'll refer to as TXG 67, was amended and reissued with an effective date of October 21st, 2020, to include crude oil and natural gas hydrostatic test discharges. TCEQ is in the process of developing 2 general permits for oil and gas extraction facilities discharges into surface waters of the state. One under the TPDES program, that's TXG 310000, TXG 31, and another under state-only authority, that's WQG 280000, WQG 28. The TPDES general permit will replace EPA's general permits, TXG 260000 and TXG 330000, and individual Railroad Commission authorizations. State-only WQG 28 will replace individual Railroad Commission permit authorizations. So, in terms of implementation activities, there's TXG 31, which covers onshore stripper well facilities, coastal facilities, and territorial seas facilities within 3 miles of the Texas coastline. It combines and replaces MPDS General Permit Number TXG 26, which expired on February 17, 2017, and MPDES General Permit Number TXG 33, which expired on July 30th, 2017, both of which are administratively continued. TCEQ shared the draft general permit for TXG 31 with stakeholders for review and comments. TCEQ is currently reviewing the comments that we received. TCEQ submitted the draft general permit TXG 31 to EPA Region 6 for a 90-day review on August 2nd, 2022. Their 90-day review is scheduled to be completed on November 1st of 2022. We have had preliminary discussions with EPA on the results of their review. So the anticipated public notice is on January 2023, and anticipated public comment period will be between January and February 2023. And the anticipated commission adoption of TXG 31 will be in spring of 2023. The development of TXG 31's notice of intent, notice of change, and notice of termination forms have also been completed. So for WQG 28, which covers outer continental shelf facilities between 3 to 10.2 miles off the Texas coastline, the TCEQ state-only general permit will propose to authorize discharges to surface waters in the Gulf of Mexico. It's actively under development and being coordinated with EPA Region 6 in their development of the renewal of the equivalent permit NPDES GMG 290000. The timeline for this GP will be paired up with the TXG 31 since the state-only GP is not subject to EPA review and approval. As such, the anticipated release for initial informal stakeholder input will be around December 2022. The anticipated commission adoption of WQG 28 will be spring 2023. And the development of the notice of intent, notice of change, and notice of termination forms have been also completed for GMG 28. In terms of oil and gas authorizations that are issued or pending, we have issued 35 general permits for hydrostatic test discharges under TXG 67, and we have around 21 individual oil and gas TPDES permit applications currently under the works. And that's pretty much all I have. Thank you. Any questions?
All right. Thank you, Cole. Next up, we've got some Homeland Security updates from Paul and Maria, but I think we'll start with Paul.
Thank you, Greg. For the Homeland Security, the annual contact update, we did complete the 2022 update, and all the data entry was done, and the data was submitted to the EPA START contractor for uploading into the emergency preparedness software so that it could be used in case of a natural disaster. This year, I think we've gotten lucky, and we've pretty much avoided hurricanes because the season is getting ready to come to a close. We are starting to prepare our lists and extracting data for next year to see who we need to mail out both electronically and hard copy letters to perform the 2023 annual update. For the 2023 annual update, which is our second year of using our water quality emergency preparedness system, which is our electronic update system, we will be stressing the use of electronic submittal. Previously, we have taken both hard copy and electronic. I think this year we're trying to stress as close to 100% electronic as possible. The one thing that is good about the STEERS portal is that when you enter the STEERS portal to perform an update, all you have to do is peruse through the data that exists for the facility and update what is changed and generate your submittal that way. You're totally in charge of your own data. With that, what we will be doing is we will be reviewing our current online help for the WQEPS system, revising and developing additional training to fill in the gaps where necessary. We'll be available for phone calls and if there's any issues that arise. We do currently have a YouTube video on our Homeland Security website which goes from the entry of the STEERS portal to completing the submittal by hitting the button to upload it into the WQEPS database. And it does allow you to stop, skip, move around to figure out where you need it. If you just need one section, there are tick marks on the video that allow you to jump right to that section. And like I said, with that, that's all I have. If you want to just save questions for after Maria's done. Greg? Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, my name is Maria, and just to add to what Paul mentioned regarding the STEERS submissions, if you guys have any questions or concerns that may arise from when you're trying to submit those updates through STEERS, please feel free to contact me as well. I'll be more than happily available to assist y'all in getting those squared away. Please go ahead and call our main contact line, or if you want to reach me directly, at my email, maria.benitez@tcq.texas.gov.
All right, thanks. Any?
Greg.
Oh, sorry, go ahead,
There
Paul.
is also the Homeland email box at homeland.tceq.texas.gov, which we can also use.
All right, any questions for Paul or Maria? You've got one. And we just ask those who are asking questions, be sure to hold the mic close so those online can hear what the questions are. Thank you.
I just have a question on whether this requirement also applies to industrial facilities, and if it does, how are they being noticed, and have they been participating?
There are certain ones that have been participating. They do get pulled because they have an active permit, and they do get noticed through either email or regular mail in terms of getting a submittal.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and, move over to the general permits update section of our meeting, and I'll hand it over to Dante.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Like I said before, I'm a permit writer on the stormwater team, so we have 4 updates, specifically 2 stormwater permits. I'll start off with the first 2. First and foremost, we have the construction general permit, probably be referred to as a CGP, and the general permit number for that is TXR 150,000. We are currently in the process of the 2023 renewal. This general permit regulates stormwater discharges from construction activities and is set to expire on March 5th of 2023. We actually start this renewal process about 2 years ahead of time. So we began in September of 2021, and a stakeholder meeting was held on October 21st of 2021, where TCEQ presented preliminary proposed changes, and then stakeholders were given a 2-week window to provide input on things they'd like to see and recommendations. Some of our preliminary proposed changes include prohibiting permit coverage for the construction or operation of a facility that is licensed for the storage of high-level radioactive waste in accordance with House Bill 7, and this was passed by the state legislature during the 87th Legislative Special Session. We've also clarified that large construction site notices must be maintained until final stabilization has been achieved. We've clarified that compliance with the permit is required until termination of the authorization. And then lastly, just some of our proposed preliminary changes is including additional requirements for site maps and descriptions to clearly identify property boundaries and soil disturbing activities. Must note phasing. This also includes demolition activities. For a full list of the preliminary proposed changes and information presented at the stakeholder meeting, you can view the TCEQ Stormwater Stakeholder Group webpage, and that is available in the handout, but it's tceq.texas.gov/permitting/stormwater/stormwater stakeholders group. All stakeholder comments, as well as comments from various TCEQ program areas, were received and the draft CGP was completed. The next step in the process after our stakeholder meeting is preparing the permit, sending it over to EPA for their review. So we've conducted management briefings, were conducted. And the TCEQ sent the draft renewal permit to EPA for their review and approval on April 14th of 2022. EPA sent TCEQ an interim objection dated July 20th of 2022 that included 3 objections and 26 recommendations. TCEQ then sent a response letter dated August 4th, along with the revised draft permit and fact sheet addressing their objections and several of the recommendations. And then EPA sent TCEQ an approval letter dated August 18th of 2022. Most recently, we have made it to the public notice stage. So the draft CGP was published for public notice, and a 30-day comment period began on September 17th of 2022. Publication was both in the Texas Register as well as the Houston Chronicle. And then at the end of the 30-day comment period, we hold a in-person public meeting on October 17th, which is also the last day of the comment period. I also wanted to note that the construction general permit draft is available on our TCEQ construction general permit website, so you can view both the draft general permit as well as the fact sheet. Additional information can be found at that same Stormwater Stakeholders Group webpage. We have a pretty comprehensive presentation that goes through all the major changes. Still related to the public meeting, all comments submitted orally during the public meeting or submitted in writing to the Office of the Chief Clerk will be reviewed, and a response to comments document will be prepared, and the proposed CGP will be revised as appropriate. So far, TCEQ has received comments from about 15 individuals. Some of these individuals have 20 comments, so it's grown into a pretty extensive document. We're currently drafting the executive director's response to comment, and our renewal is expected, or the renewal permit, is expected to go to the commissioner's agenda for adoption in late February and then be issued and made effective on March 5th of 2023. So that's about it for the construction general permit. Any questions on that one? Okay. Moving forward, we also have the John Graves general permit. General permit number on this is TXG 500,000. And we've just begun the process for the 2024 renewal. So like I said before, we start this about 18 to 24 months ahead of time. So this general permit regulates stormwater and wastewater discharges from quarries in the John Graves Scenic Riverway, and it is set to expire on March 28th of 2024. If anyone would like to submit informal feedback on ways we can improve the John Graves general permit, you can send an email to the SWGP mailbox, and that's swgp@tceq.texas.gov, and then it will be reviewed for our consideration. We have started the renewal process for this general permit. We anticipate publishing a draft general permit for your review in the fall of 2023, and then lastly, we anticipate going to Commissioner's agenda in January of 2024 and issuing this general permit on March 29th of 2024. Any questions on the John Graves permit? Excellent. Okay, so Michaela will be finishing it up from here.
Okay, as Dante mentioned, I'm Michaela, also a permit writer on the stormwater team. So I'm going to give an update on 2 more stormwater general permits. The first being our multi-sector general permit, also called the MSGP, and that's general permit number TXR 050,000. So for this update, we're just going to tell you a little bit about how the implementation of electronic reporting for that permit is going. This general permit is the permit that regulates stormwater discharges from our industrial activities, and it was reissued last year, August 14th, 2021. And under this new version of the general permit, all of the permittees must report their monitoring data electronically through the NetDMR system unless they qualify for and obtain a waiver from electronic reporting. So we are very proud to announce that the NetDMR system is finally ready for these permittees to access. We worked with EPA quite extensively to be able to flow all of our permittees' permit information into the EPA system so that NetDMR would be available to our permittees. We recently held a free webinar about reporting in NetDMR for our MSGP permittees. It was hosted by our Small Business and Local Government Assistance Group on October 11th. A recording of that webinar is planned to be posted on our TCEQ YouTube channel, so be on the lookout for that. It should be a great resource for our permittees to look back on for information about how to report. For additional information about the NetDMR webinar, you can visit the Small Business and Local Government Assistance Tools webpage. They have one specifically for the multi-sector general permit. And that is the end of my update for the MSGP. Any questions on that one? Okay. Then I will move on to the final stormwater general permit update. This one is for our small or phase 2 municipal separate storm sewer system or MS4 general permit. And that's general permit number TXR 040,000. So this is the general permit that regulates stormwater discharges from small or phase 2 MS4s, and that's set to expire on January 24th, 2024. As Dante mentioned, we always start the general permit renewals about 2 years ahead of time. So we did start this renewal process in May of this year. We held a stakeholder meeting on September 27th about the draft general permit. And at this meeting, we presented some preliminary proposed changes, including some proposed permit language for a few of the minimum control measures or MCMs under this general permit. We then gave stakeholders 2 weeks to submit their informal comments on the information we presented at the stakeholder meeting, which were due on October 12th, 2022. We got pretty great return on comments. We received comments from about 50 individuals. So we're very grateful for that. We're still moving through those comments and seeing how we can improve the draft general permit based on the feedback we received. If you're interested in any of the information, the handouts and the recording of that meeting are available on our Stormwater Stakeholders Group webpage. You could go take a look. Dante mentioned it before, but this webpage, if you're not familiar, is the tcq.texas.gov/permitting/stormwater/stormwater stakeholders group. It's also pretty easily located just by searching Stormwater Stakeholders Group on the TCEQ page. And that is all I have for that update. Any questions? Okay. So next, I'm actually going to give some updates for Shannon Gibson, who you might see on the agenda. The first update is on the livestock manure compost general permit, or WQAWG 200,000. This general permit authorizes the disposal of wastewater generated from livestock manure compost operations by evaporation or beneficial use by irrigation. So TCEQ is proposing to renew this permit, which is set to expire on November 10 of 2023. Any questions on the livestock manure compost general permit? Okay. Next is an update on the petroleum bulk stations and terminals general permit, which is TXG 340,000. This general permit authorizes discharges of facility wastewater, contact stormwater, and stormwater associated with industrial activities into or adjacent to water in the state from petroleum bulk stations and terminals. So the commission issued this general permit on September 15th of 2022, and it became effective yesterday on October 24th of 2022. So these facilities that are currently authorized under the general permit will need to submit their notice of intent by January 22nd, 2023. Any questions on that one?
Is that issued permit available on the website already, or is that still waiting to be posted?
It should be available, but I can double check for you.
Okay, thanks.
My question was going to be, is the NOI posted yet? I checked earlier this week, it wasn't.
It should be. We typically have them available on the date it becomes effective, so I can double check on that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more, I can move on to the next one, which is the Petroleum Contaminated Wastewater General Permit, or the TXG 830,000. This is a general permit which authorizes stormwater discharges of water contaminated by petroleum substances into or adjacent to water in the state. So we are proposing to renew and amend this general permit, which is currently set to expire on September 12th of 2023. The draft general permit and fact sheet were sent to EPA for their 90-day review on October 5th of 2022. Any questions on that one? Okay, and that is all the updates I have for the general permits.
All right, thank you, Michaela. We'll move to the last section of our meeting updates, and that has to do with rule updates. And going to deviate a little bit from the agenda. Lewis is actually going to give both of those 2 rule updates for us. Lewis?
Yes. Can y'all hear me? Okay. First, let's do 210, Chapter 210, which is the water reuse. The Commission approved the proposed rulemaking on September 22nd. The notice was published in the Texas Register on October 7th. Public meeting is going to be held on November 7th, which is in a little over 2 weeks from now. And it's going to be in this room at 10 o'clock. And the public comment period closes on November 8th, Election Day. This rulemaking, if y'all are not aware of it, is a very simple rulemaking clarifying some confusion that we've had in the past. It's on when you can apply for a 210 application. The other thing that I have is Chapter 217. We're in the part of a major revision, or what we look at. The way the criteria is kind of set up right now, we look at updating it every 5 years because technology keeps changing, standards keep changing. So we're working on that right now. We are planning on having 4 stakeholder meetings in the very near future. Currently, right now, we're working on subchapter B, which is this kind of the general design. If you have no information, power and stuff of that nature. We're looking at chapters C and D, which are the collection systems from the standard collection system to the alternative collection systems. We are looking at subchapter E, which is, I believe, the activated sludge. We're spending a lot of time working on, F, which is the activated sludge, we're spending a lot of time on the nutrient side. We're expanding the nutrient section. The design criteria, we're updating several sections within this chapter, especially on MBRs, SBRs, membranes. We're also looking at adding ceramic membranes to the design criteria. We're looking at flux rates. The next chapter that we are working on is the natural systems. We're looking at doing some minor updates to that chapter. We're looking at making some changes to the innovative facultative lagoon section. But most of the stuff we're looking at is just minor on the liners, and we're cross-referencing some other chapters of the rules that have been put in place since the last time we did the design criteria. Those are the chapters that we're actively working on. We're also working on the submission, moving subchapter I, or making subchapter I from chapter 222, which is the subdrip or the SAD systems, and putting them in their proper place, which is the reserved area we have for subchapter I. Those are the chapters that we're currently working on. If you have any questions or you have any additions that you want to add to those chapters, feel free to contact me or Paul. And nothing is in stone right now, but we are looking at those chapters real hard. And then after that, we're going to start looking at the disinfection chapters. On disinfection, we're looking at possibly adding PAA, peracetic acid, and we're looking at some updates on UV because we've got some problems with some of the plants with regrowth issues after the UV lamps, and we're trying to figure out how to handle that. And that is in a short and sweet. We can go in a hell of a lot of detail if you wanted, but that is a short and sweet overhead review. But we are planning on the stakeholder meetings, we are planning on breaking the stakeholder meetings up into certain sub-chapters at a time, and the last one will be over the whole chapter. So feel free to ask me any questions, and I'll be able to give you as many answers as I can. Thank you.
Any questions for Lewis? All right, thank you, Lewis. All right, well, that's the last of the presentations we wanted to give. We'll now go into our final question and answer portion of the meeting. If there's anything you thought about topics we addressed earlier on, you can ask those, or anything else on your mind. So.
Hi, my name is Sarah Stogner. I have a stupid question. I'm trying to figure out how this commission and the Railroad Commission interact in discussions of produced water inundating into groundwater. Can you guys tell me like which meeting or how I would get an agenda item to come and present to relevant people within this commission on some of the things that's happening right now on our ranch in the Permian, as far as over-injection of produced water and it penetrating into our freshwater aquifers?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I would have to think about that for a little bit, so maybe after the meeting's over, we can talk a little bit. Nothing comes to mind as far as an actual current forum to plug into, but I know there's some other folks here at the agency who probably have some better insight on that, so, but do appreciate the question. Yes, over here.
On the alternative language, I know you mentioned there's Spanish templates already in place. Are there any other languages being considered for sort of standard templates to assist applicants?
Great question. So right now we only have planned the Spanish templates. Definitely, if you think that there's a great need for another language, send us that feedback. That way we can take it to our management to consider if those could be developed. Thank you.
This question, Sarah Bergen with Bracewell. This is questions for Michaela. Has the draft general permit for petroleum contaminated wastewater, is that been released in any kind of draft form, or is it not going to be released until after EPA does its review?
Thank you for the question. I believe it hasn't been released yet, and it'll be available during just the public notice period after EPA review.
And I think we have a couple questions from online viewers. Go ahead, Danielle.
I have two. I received one for Patricia Dean. It's a Title VI question, requirement question. She wants to know, will applicants know, or will the applicants know all of the alternative language translations required for permitting public notice activities? Currently, it's fairly clear if a Spanish translation is required. What about other languages?
That's an excellent question. So the rules for most permittees require that if and I may not get this exactly right, but basically if there is a second language requirement at the local elementary or middle school, I believe it is, in whatever language, that would be the alternative notice language requirement. So if there were a program for Mandarin, then a notice might be required in Mandarin. And so that should be fairly clear in the application, and applicants should be telling us, what programs there are in the area. Certainly they can reach out and ask more specific questions if they need some guidance.
Okay. I have another one. It's a MS4 comment question from Julie Winchell. Is the stormwater permit team still accepting comments for the MS4 draft permits? Technical difficulties during the stakeholder meetings prevented live interactions. She has questions and may like to make more comments if possible.
Sure. We definitely are always open to more feedback, so if they have anything to provide, they can feel free to email that to swgp@tcq.texas.gov.
Okay, and I have one more. It's for Kara Denny. Chapter 39, what? Oh, okay, I'm just. Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
I'll say, wow, Kara, how'd you do that? You're here, but you're there. Okay. So just to be clear for those online, that question already has been answered earlier in the meeting. Any other questions for any of us? Okay. Well, then we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate your participation as always, and y'all have a good rest of the day. Thank you.